So good morning, everyone. I'm Suneeta. In my 2 decades of international banking experience, the one thing I've learned is one of the most misunderstood phrases in corporate lingo today is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mid-March this year, Donald Trump rolled back a whole bunch of DEI programs in the US, arguing that they were discriminatory and that they worked against merit-based programs. So in a post-Trump world, what does DEI really mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for me? So let me make it personal. Late 2017, I must have been the only person in the history of the company I worked in at that point to have declined the opportunity to become managing director. Why? It was on account of IVF treatment. I needed to go for my first round. So I felt I'd be doing the team a disservice by taking on increased responsibilities at work while trying for a baby. So my boss, who was my sponsor and mentor at the time, supported my decision. Come Q3 2018, and I was placed for the opportunity again. But this time, the IVF was successful. And I was pregnant, so I still refused the role. And, the voices in my head told me that it wouldn't be the right thing to do, to vie for the next role, and it was a global role, and, I know I'd have to manage teams right from Hong Kong to Mexico. It was a 5,000-member team, and I knew that was the wrong time for me to take that on. But my boss insisted this time. And I took the role after discussing it with my husband, who was extremely supportive. But I worked double time, long hours while heavily pregnant, traveled. And then when the baby came, I continued to check in with the team. I continued to stay online, et cetera, et cetera. I felt I owed my best to both, to the baby and to my leader. And that, for me, is a living example of how leaders in companies can make diverse individuals feel valued, read included, and hence drive exceptional performance with extreme loyalty. Imagine walking into a company where the boardroom or the shop floor looks very diverse. Different skin colors, different attire, different genders, different surnames. But yet, in that staff meeting, only a few voices have shaped the plan. That mismatch is everywhere. In the 6 countries I've worked, it's not just an India problem. You may have seats at the table, but the voices are few. So why does this matter? Like any crazy COO would say, so what's the so what? If we want our country's economy to grow, and we have some ambitious plans, we have to increase and improve labor participation rates. But India is a country of deep and layered identities: language, region, caste, class, religion, gender, disability, and more. I would also now include wealth as another divide that creates a separate identity. And this is what makes our inclusion challenge that much more complex as opposed to Western conversations, but it's largely ethnicity, gender, and disability. Indian organizations often struggle with translating achieved diversity targets into authentic everyday inclusion. We heard the panelists today talk exactly about that. They fall into the trap of equating diversity with inclusion, assuming that demographic representation alone is sufficient to foster equity, belonging, and participation. The failure to distinguish the two, i.e. diversity and inclusion, results in environments where surface-level diversity targets meet and hence coexist with systemic exclusion. a phenomenon now widely referred to as diversity without inclusion. Here's an example. Picture Shahista, an engineer from a Tier 3 city community college. She joins a large MNC. Her team welcomes her. She's invited into meetings. 6 months later, she realizes all the big projects, those that lead to promotions, are repeatedly assigned to a tight network she's not in. Folks who know the boss, went to the same school or university, have the same after-work interests, perhaps all come from South Bombay. Her advice is sought. She's included in the discussions, but not in the decisions. She has a seat, perhaps even a voice, but no vote. Discussions are held, decisions are made without taking her into confidence. This has eaten away at her motivation and consequently her ability and willingness to perform or go beyond the basic. Shahista's experience is not an anecdote. It's a pattern. It's diversity without inclusion. Although regulatory interventions like the Companies Act and SEBI mandates have tripled women's representation in corporate spaces over the past decade, true gender parity remains elusive, with women occupying less than 5% of chairperson roles. Similarly, despite efforts to enhance the employability of persons with disabilities, PWDs also comprise of less than 1% of most of the corporate workforce. What does true gender parity mean? In my head, it's making the pay and having the vote. Simple definition, but super hard to implement. But I must commend our hosts, Train and the Retailers Association of India, for making significant strides in boldly making DEI its core mandate. It's heartening to see persons with varied disabilities, women and people of other genders, managing shop and factory floors where regional and cultural diversity is tapped into as a strength. The rest of us have much to learn from you guys. So what really is the problem in corporate spaces, particularly in B2B related industries? Number one, organizations often have DEI policies on paper, but regular training, leadership accountability, and measurable inclusion outcomes are inconsistently applied. Number two, people often feel accepted by their immediate teams. Systemically, however, they see unequal access to promotions, leadership opportunities, or decision making. So corporate offices and COOs like me, we love our numbers. And diversity can be easily measured. It's ticked boxes, met quotas, easy targets, positive trending graphs, sighs or smiles over some average coffee, and our diversity goals are met. So we are diverse, unquestionably so. Or at least all our performance appraisals tell us we are diverse. But how inclusive are we, really? Let me make it personal again. Twice in my career, I was a returning mother coming back from maternity leave. I was blessed to have leadership teams around me that were supportive of my needs to leave early, work intermittently from home, take casual days off, etc. But not all of us have an enabling ecosystem such as this. And today, I know of several young girls who worry about corporate perception post-marriage, and young mothers who feel work opportunities have passed them by because of their demanding domestic responsibilities. Across my career, across companies and countries, cases have been brought to me where the obvious is true. True inclusion is hard to embed because it's so inextricably linked to your corporate culture. Here are some examples on how things can go wrong. When Muslim staff are offended with constant offerings of food during Ramzan by staff who just forgot they were fasting. Where LGBTQ staff felt they were bullied by colleagues in a constant but subtle way. When young girls were defined by what they wore, how long they stayed out, and their ability to, work with the boys. Where then here's this live example where a young gentleman from the south of India feels a little ridiculed because of his regional accent every time he spoke in Hindi. Inclusion implies being treated with dignity, where you can bring your best to work and know how it's recognized. So what can corporate leadership truly do? A real COO never leaves an audience without handing out actions. So here are mine. Number one, inclusive job descriptions, broaden campus city hiring, move beyond entry-level quotas, source talent from non-traditional sources, tier 2, tier 3 towns, vocational institutes, NGOs, etc. Have unbiased audits of pay and appraisals, enforce grievance mechanisms, and have equitable parental leave. To the lady from Titan, those actions were just brilliant, but I think all of them across the panel really spoke of some very pointed, hard to implement actions that can make a massive difference in moving that needle to slightly below 1%, to Sir Nagesh's point. Rotate high-impact projects, install mentorship sponsorship programs, have anonymous pulse surveys, recognize contributions from non-traditional talent pools, make stores, offices, branches physically accessible, train frontline staff to support customers with disabilities, elder shoppers, and limited literacy customers. But in a corporate environment, also standardize competency frameworks and have transparent promotion criteria to reduce network bias. Coach managers on inclusive behaviors, what to say, how to react, what not to say. How to allocate shifts fairly, crediting ideas publicly, making sure needed facilities are available, such as mothers' rooms, wellness rooms, flexi working hours, night drop-offs for female staff. And lastly, where legal and ethical, disaggregate people data by role, location, gender, caste, region, disability, religion, contract type, so that the effectiveness of all of the above can be measured and hence managed. Diversity along with true inclusion fuels performance, self-motivation, innovation, and creativity. I can personally attest to this given my own lived experience. Creating an inclusive corporate culture is now not just a social justice ask, but an economic imperative in the 21st century. It is existential for every business in every industry to carefully understand the demographic of its stakeholder ecosystem and morph itself into being more future relevant. While we must remain proud of our cultural heritage, we must also cut our ties to some outdated traditions that are still deeply rooted in societal biases. A Viksit Bharat, an Atmanirbhar Bharat, is an India that converts its language, region, caste, class, religion, gender, disability diversities into strengths and not fault lines. An India where every Indian feels valued and included, and where every corporate environment leads the way to social and economic change, where companies such as ours not just sharpen youth to be smarter executives, but also mold them into being better human beings. Thank you.